Today we're going to start talking about integers. Okay? Now, integers mean that we have a positive or a negative number. Okay? Now, so this is a positive, and we've been working with positive numbers ever since you started learning how to count. Okay? We just don't call them positive 1, positive 2, positive 3. When you started learning how to count in kindergarten, you just counted 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? But those are all positive numbers. Okay? So then we also have what we call negative numbers. Okay? Which tells us that we're lower in value. Okay? When we think of it, when your parents or grandparents or you guys later on in life start to have a checkbook and you balance your checkbook, you've probably heard people say, I'm in the negative, meaning they don't have any money. They've really went against what money they did have. Okay? Which means they've wrote a bad check, or they used their debit card when they shouldn't have. Okay? That means the negative value, meaning that you don't have money in the bank when you said you did. Okay? Which is a bad thing. Alright? Do what now? Yes, when you write a check and do that, they call it an overdraw. Okay, which means you didn't have the money in there. So most of the time then the banks charge you extra. So not only did you now owe the bank money for whatever you didn't have in there, you owe them more money because most of them charge you so much money, okay, to do that. All right, these are positive and negative. Now I'm going to use the word whole numbers. And we're going to talk about some groups of numbers here in a second. Okay? Yes, that looks like that little positive numbers are just our normal. Okay, negative numbers might look like this. Well, get my panel right. Okay, this little symbol here is your negative sign. Okay? Yes. Yeah. And we'll talk about some different uses when we can use that negative number, okay? Hold on. All right. Now, we have different types of numbers. First group of numbers that we deal with are called real numbers. And you may want to write this as your flow chart like I'm going to, okay? All the numbers we are going to talk about for now and what you're going to talk about for the next couple of years are called real numbers. They're numbers that we talk about every day. All right. Later, when you get into high school and you get some of your higher math classes, you're going to get into things that are imaginary numbers and irrational numbers. Okay? So you're going to get other types of numbers. But right now, we're only going to deal with real numbers. And real numbers are numbers we've always dealt with. Now, real numbers branch off into two types of numbers. We have an irrational number, and we have a rational number. Okay? Irrational number is a number and I'm going to put when simplified, which means it's worked down as much as you can, that never ends and never repeats. Need a drink of water? Sure. All right. An example of an irrational number is one that we typically, okay, round, and it's pi, which is 3.14. When we talk about circles, you'll hear that word pi, and it's that funny looking little shape there. That's an irrational number. When you go to actually type it in on your calculator or on a computer and ask what the digits of pi is, it's a never-ending, never-repeating number. I can type off 17 pages of numbers right now, and there's probably anywhere to 1,000 digits on a page. And it will keep going and going and going and going. So it would never stop. So that's an irrational number. Now, when we got to deal with pi, on our calculators, when you get those later, you'll have a pi symbol. I don't know if these four-function ones do. I think they do. Yep, he's on there. You can have a pi key on here, and it looks like that, two little sticks and a little wavy line over top. Or when you get the big calculators in high school, you also have pi. But we typically round it as 3.14, and we just stop. Okay? Now, the next type of number that I have is called rational number. Okay? This is a number that's going to end. Okay? So this is a number that can terminate. Which means it's going to end. Okay? It can repeat. Where? Over here? No, it's the pi symbol. It can repeat like 0.3333. Okay, that's what I mean when I say repeat. Okay. Or it can be a decimal that ends. Okay. Now, for my rational number, okay, my rational number can break down into other things as well. Okay? It's kind of like we talk about species of things. We can talk about dogs. Then dogs can be broken down into different types of dogs, correct? You could actually have working dogs. Okay, and under working dogs, then you can have things like labs, German shepherds. Okay, you could have house dogs, which are more your little bitty house pets. Okay, so under rational numbers, we're going to break down into other types of numbers. Okay, so I'm going to extend our page. So under rational, and I'm just going to write them right here. So my first one, okay, is going to be a whole number. Whole number starts with 0 because of the O here, and that's 0, 1, 2, 3, as far as I can count. It's a complete number. It's no part of another number. So it can't be 2 and 1/3. That's not a whole number. A whole number is complete. Okay? Then we have what we call a natural number. Now, some of these numbers can fall into different groups. Natural number starts with 1 and goes up. So 1, 2, 3. Again, as far as I can count. Okay, so right now, if I gave you the number 4, it's actually two types of numbers, right? It's a whole number, and it's a natural number, correct? Okay, kind of like my dog, I have a lab. Well, he's a working dog, but he's also a house dog because I keep him in my house. So I would throw him under two classifications. That's the same thing with numbers. Okay? Well, if you need to go underneath and keep going, that's fine. Okay? My third set of numbers, okay, is going to be fractions and decimals. Do I need to show examples of fractions or decimals? Yes. 1/2, 4/3, 2.14, okay? 0.3333, and it continues on. That's one of those decimals that never end but repeat. Okay? 1/3 is also one of those, because when you change him to a decimal, what happens? He repeats, correct? Okay? Now I'm going to have to go underneath as well. Okay. Then I'm going to have an integer. Okay. I'm going to have an integer there. And an integer is what we're talking about now. And that's our positive and negative. Oops. Should be a V there. Whole numbers. Okay. Positive or negative whole numbers. Alright. I have a question. Okay, so if I gave you the number, and I'm going to scroll this back up so you guys can see all that. If I gave you the number negative 16 over 4, what type? First of all, is it irrational or rational?
Rational.
It's rational. So under rational, what type of number is it? Is it a whole number? No, because it has a negative out there, so we know it's not a whole number. Is it a natural number? No, again, because it has a negative in front of it. Is it a fraction or a decimal? Yes. And is it an integer? Yes, because what is negative 16 over 4? If I divide that out, it's, later on we'll learn about our symbols, but that's negative 4, and so that also falls under integer.
How do you know if it's a negative?
We're going to talk about that later, I just told you. Okay. So, that comes into two classifications of numbers. Okay? So, I will tell you on the SOL test, they'll give you a number and ask you which groups these belong to. Alright? So that's why I'm bringing it up and explaining, because then we'll kind of, as we go throughout the year, we'll continue adding and talking about those. Okay? Now, anybody have a question on that? That's just your different types of numbers. Okay? Now, we're going to talk about a number line. I would, yes. Now, here's your number line. Now, 0 is going to be somewhere in the middle of your number line. All the numbers to the right of 0 are positive numbers. Yes. And now, these are steps away from 0. So, the first step is going to be 1 step away from 0. And then 2 and 3. So, we're going to count out away from 0. You want your ball back? Okay, so starting at 0, the first mark starts at 1, 2, 3, 4. So what's this next number out here going to be? This one behind 10, 11. Okay, so it just keeps going as long as I keep drawing that number line. The arrows tell me that that line continues on forever. Well, I mean, you're going to draw number lines like this with arrows on the end. I mean, you're not going to draw a line that's 500 points out when I don't need it. Now, the numbers to the left of 0 are your negative numbers. And again, starting at 0, your first step out becomes negative 1, then negative 2, negative 3, and I keep counting out negative numbers. Okay? The biggest mistake that I see people make when they draw a number line, they'll start at 0, they'll do the positive numbers correct. They don't. They'll start here and go, okay, well, here's negative 12, here's negative 11, here's negative 10. Okay? So they get it confused when they have to plot. Plot means put a dot on there for a certain point. They'll get confused and count backwards. Okay? This is a common mistake. Okay? So that is not right. Your first step out is a -1, a -2. Okay? All right. Anybody have a question by looking at that number line right now? Okay, because I'm going to erase my writing because we're going to still use the number line. All right. If we have to, we can borrow somebody's. Now, I'm sorry. If I ask you to freehand draw me one, you're going to draw a line, and somewhere in the middle you're going to put the 0. Then you'll put your positives, and then you'll come back and just do your negatives and count out. Yeah. I would always start with my 0 and count both ways. Okay? All right. Now, when they say plot a point on a number line, what they mean is, so if they ask you to plot a point and they give you -4, they want you to find -4 in this line and put a dot on it. Okay? So I would go and I would find my -4 and I would put a dot there. That's all they mean when they say plot a point. The tests we did the other day. Oh, yeah. Were they? Okay. Very many of them? No. Okay. And see, we have different versions of that test. So you might have had 2, and you might only have 1. Okay? So there's different tests in there, okay? Did you make the correct guess when you had to do that? Okay. Okay. All right. Now, so now they may ask me to plot. They may put several points on there. And say, okay, plot all those points. So what do they want you to do? Put a dot on each one. So here is -4. Here is +5. Here's 0. Here's -2. And there's 10. Now, sometimes they'll say, put these in order from smallest to least to greatest. Okay, now, if you just look at the numbers, your negatives are going to come first. So it's like I'm starting at the end over there and working across my board. Okay? So if I'm starting over here, what number do I come up on first? -4. What's the next number I come up on? Then, next, and last. Now, here's what you're going to pay attention to about your negative numbers. If I take away and I look at positive numbers, 4 and 2, which one's the largest? 4 and 2. 4. When I talk about negative, it's just the opposite. So when I have -4 and -2, 4 typically looks larger in our mind, but with that negative, it's actually the smallest. Okay? So when they throw that negative in there, he becomes smaller. Okay? Anything? Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. So let's look at another one. Let's erase this because I want to keep this number line. So if I ask you on this one to order from least to greatest, and I shortcut it here, okay, L to G, and I give you numbers of -3, -4, -4, and -5. Okay, What do you think is going to be my smallest value? -5. All right. Who thinks they know what the next number would be? Bree. Next number? Olivia? Austin? -3. And my last one? 4. Okay. Let's check. Let's go back and plot these points. So here's -3. Here's +3. Here's 4. Here's -4. And here's -5. So if I go from left to right, did -5 appear to be the first one? -4, -3, 3, and 4. Okay? So sometimes you may need to see the number line. Okay? Other times you may not. Okay? Sometimes they'll ask you to plot the points first and then put them in order. Okay? Yes. There was some of it, yes. Okay? You can. If I had, they're not going to do so much right now because we're trying to talk about whole numbers and integers, so we're not going to have that. But I could graph that. If I had a -1.5, here's -1, and I'm going to go halfway more. So -1.5 would be here. Okay? I could plot it on the number line. But -1.5 is not an integer. Okay? But yes, you can have fractions or decimals. Okay? You can. But you can change the percent to a, and so there you go. Okay? Percent is part of a whole number, so it becomes a fraction, which we can force into a decimal, which we can force onto that number line. Okay? All right. I still want that number line for a minute. So I'm going to erase all this for a sec. All right. Okay, and we're going to practice some. Okay, so some practice will help you here in a second. Okay. Now, let me ask a question. Actually, let's stop right there just for a minute. Of -236 is going to be 236. What's the absolute value of 42 going to be? 42. What's the absolute value of -1,362? 1,362. Okay? You drop the negative because it is only asking me how many units away from 0 am I. It doesn't ask if it's to the left. It doesn't, I'm sorry, am I bothering you? It doesn't ask if it's to the left. It doesn't ask if it's to the right. It doesn't ask if it's positive, if it's negative. It just says how many units away from 0 are you. I am 1,362. Okay? Now, sometimes they will give you numbers and ask you to compare. And they might say, I have the absolute value of -14 and 13. And they want you to compare. First of all, what does compare mean? Compare. Greater than or less than. Okay? Yeah, that's my little open block for me to put my answer. Now, for me to do it, I have to pull this out of absolute value. So what is the absolute value of -14? 14. So 14 is what to 13? Greater than. So my answer is greater. Okay? Okay? So what if I have absolute value of 14 and absolute value of -14? They are the same. So that's equal. Okay? What if you have -12 and 12? Now, what's my difference between this problem and this problem? This one had absolute value. Dylan, you're bothering me. Negative 12 is what to 12? Think of my number line. Here's 0. Down here's negative 12, right? And up here's positive 12. So negative 12 is less than 12. Because think of my number line. Okay, these numbers are always smaller. Every step I get, I keep getting bigger. So this number is smaller than this number. So that's less than. Now, but I could give you two negatives. I could say negative 12 is what to negative 11? Here's negative 12. Here's negative 11. Negative 12 is less than negative 11. So whatever is more to your left is smaller. Okay? All right, let's pause for a minute again.